Today I speak with Dr. Elena Esparza. She is the founder of Just Breathe Healing, where she is an alternative medicine practitioner. She uses plants, chiropractic, and applied kinesiology, among other things, to heal her patients. I ask her questions about each one of her methods to heal people. I also ask her what made her open her business in the first place and what her advice is to all current and future business owners. We end the interview by talking about her recent trip to Baja California, and she leaves the audience with 2 pieces of advice. There's a little bit of something in this episode for everyone. Enjoy. Hello everyone, I'm Nicholas Seguiri. Today I'm with Dr. Elena Esparza. She's the founder and owner of Just Breathe Healing. She's a doctor and a chiropractor, a traditional healer. People refer to her as a traditional doctor with modern credentials, and I personally view her as a botanist, a spiritual coach, and the official medicine woman of East Los Angeles. Dr. Elena, welcome to the show today.
Wow, thank you. What a nice introduction.
Now, Dr. Elena, I guess the first thing that a lot of people see when they come to your practice, to your office, is they notice the plants in the front yard. And even when they pass the plants in the front yard, they come in and they look against the wall and they see a bunch of jars and plants. The jars are full of plant leaves, herbs, spices, oils, and a whole plethora of other things that I probably don't even know what you have in there. I guess, how did your journey start with plants?
That's a great question. Well, I grew up not too far from here, where I have my office, literally a block and a half away on top of a hilltop. No cars can go up there. It's just, even today, it's still staircases up to there. And my grandmother lived in the house next door. And she and her husband brought Mexico with them when they came to the United States. And she planted a fortress of plants with magueys on the outside to protect the property. And then on the inside, it was just all number of plant foods, flowers, several different kinds of trees. And so she had this love of nature and the earth and feeding her family. And plus, they were poor, so that was the way that they took care of each other. And so I grew up with this amazing lady who had her hands in the earth all the time. I mean, she looked like the earth. She was dark and brown and beautiful. And I was just fascinated with it. And my mother encouraged us to be outside. So I spent many hours outside. You know how kids today are on telephones? That didn't happen with us.
Yeah.
We were outside and playing, digging, looking for treasures, tasting plants. And so it just stuck with me that I need to be outside and plants are my friends. And my grandmother had really strict rules about how you should be with plants. And if you were having a bad day, you didn't get to be in her garden, you know, because our mood would affect them.
Oh, wow. So
I had this awareness that plants are in relationship to us and we're in relationship to them. And, you know, and it was just part of everyday life to be with her. And I would stay with her because my mom worked, so she left us with her, so that influence was really embedded.
So she was your first teacher when it came to botany and plants.
Absolutely, yeah. And that they had spirits and that they really feel us and we can affect them if we're not paying attention.
It reminds me, sometimes when I catch my mother in the garden, if you sneak up behind her, you'll catch her talking to the plants.
See?
Because I think she has like the same notion as well too, that plants can hear us and plants could feed off of us.
Yeah.
It's funny, we have a sabila plant, and she notices that when you put it in the sun, it doesn't like it. And she moved it to the shade. In a couple of days, the green started coming back and it started growing. That's how powerful plants are.
Yeah, and they're always talking to us. If we just need to give it a little attention. And there's so many metaphors with the garden and ourselves and our body. And I learned that through spending so much time outdoors in a garden. So yeah, there's lots of things we can learn.
Do you remember the first moment when you really connected with the plant? Like, what did you feel, or what did you think, or what emotions did you feel that you said, I guess, that the whole world opened up to you?
That's a great question. And three things popped into my mind, but the one that really sticks out is where my house was. My mom and dad had planted a tree, and it's the main plant you can see when you pass through that area. When you look up on the hill, it's this big, beautiful tree, and I would say that I connected to that tree before I connected to any other plant, because it was big, and two, it was a safe haven. Whenever we played the game, it was the safe place.
Yeah.
If you were touching the tree, nobody could mess with you. And it became our place where we had a swing. It became a place where we played under when it was really hot. I mean, it gets hot here in LA.
Yeah.
So it was a haven, and it protected us, and it watched over us. And I had this idea that it knew so many stories about all the people that lived in that area, who lived under this house. So that was actually my first recollection, like, you really know us, like, you know us. And besides being in my grandmother's garden, that tree is still significant to me. And when I drive by, I often like, hey, you're still there, hello.
Yeah.
Here I am, I still love you, you know.
Yeah. A lot of people refer to you as spiritual. Can you talk about maybe the emotions that you felt from that tree as well? Did you feel anything, like, when you were near it? Did you feel at peace? Did you feel happy? What emotions did you feel?
Mostly I felt protected.
Okay.
Because it became the safe place, it was just like you knew that if you just stood against that tree, that no harm can come to you. Mm-hmm. I really get that. And even standing up against it, you know, we even have little marks to show how much we grew against this tree. It was our protector. Yeah. And it was big, and I mean, I couldn't get my hands around it. Even now, I can't get my arms around it. So it was like my father. You know, it had this masculine energy of protection. And my dad was a truck driver, so he wasn't often there. So whenever I felt lonely, like, where is he? I'd go to the tree, you know, and so the sense of I'm protected, or I'm rooted, or there was a sense of, like, all is well as long as I could stand by this tree.
I also read on your website, too, that you travel to a lot of countries to gain more knowledge about botany, about how plants can heal us. Can you talk about those adventures? What countries have you been to where you wanted to go and expand your knowledge about plants and how they can heal us?
Well, the majority of my travels were in Mexico, because my grandparents were from there. My mom and dad were born here, but my grandparents came from central Mexico, and I was told that we had ancestors in the Yucatan.
Okay.
So I decided when I graduated from college that I wanted to go there. And I took a trip all by myself, and it was I didn't know that it was a big deal at the time, but I decided that I was going to take a trip, and I was going to go for as long as I had money, and find my ancestors and connect with anybody who had medicine to share. So that was my first journey, and it was awesome. It was more like exploratory, and I got to spend 3 months in Mexico. So I started on the Yucatan, and I made my way back to Guanajuato, where my grandparents were from, and then from there I came home. And along the journey, I just would talk to people and ask them questions about their medicine. And in the mercados, there's always some kind of person selling yerbas. And as soon as you talk to them, oh, well, we get our yerbas from that guy over there. And every day I would meet somebody new. And when I was in the Yucatan, I got to spend some time in a place called Santa Elena. And well,
that was a sign, wasn't it?
That was just like, what? And it's called Santa Elena. It was really awesome. And I got to spend time with a sobador, a yerbero, and a huesero. And they're not all the same. And so I spent 1 month just with those people. And it was beautiful. They were so generous and kind and accepting and tolerant, because I really didn't know that side. I mean, I knew plants from my grandmother and how to use them for this simple things, but to actually a practitioner who works with people in their illness and taking the responsibility of guiding them through their illnesses, I didn't really know that until I met these people. And I was I was already in college.
Mm-hmm.
So it opened my eyes to the possibility of you can actually help people with these plants. And there was a whole time where I didn't even, when you're growing up as a high school and you don't care about anything but yourself. So there was a whole time when I felt absent from being in touch with plants and other people, and I was so self-absorbed that it really took me getting out of my own self and meeting others who were in real life and death situations and seeing how they had to deal with those things and listening to their stories and seeing their lives affected by somebody else's care. That totally started a whole new life for me. I mean, it literally opened me to the idea that I wonder if I could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was at the beginning, that first trip when I was in college.
It sounded like it gave you a lot of empathy.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and a lot of humbleness. It's easy when you grow up here in the United States to only focus on yourself. It's so easy. You see it on TV, you see it in magazines. It's and in our case, before you, obviously, it was mostly in each other, our friends, and it was all about us and understand me. And and when you go someplace else, you feel ridiculous being so selfish and self-absorbed. When people have daily crises on how they're going to feed their kids, it's a life changer. It really is. It opened up my world.
Those 3 practitioners you talked about, could you repeat those titles again? And you said each one is different. So I'm assuming that a lot of people think they all do the same thing. So could you repeat those practitioners again, their titles, and the difference between each one?
Oh, okay. So the first one was a yerbero. Mm-hmm. And what he did is he was an expert at plants. He could feel their spirit. He understood their language. He understood what their purposes were for, who to use them with, and how much. So his whole work, and in his place, he had piles, and like you see here, mm-hmm. piles and piles of herbs hanging from different places, or in little baskets, or crushed up in a little metate. So his expertise was putting plants on people, giving them to ingest, or smoking.
Okay.
So that's all he did. When I went to visit the huesero, the what they call the bone worker, which was what I was interested in since I'm a chiropractor, right? There almost didn't see any herbs at all. And gnarly fingers, and it was a husband and wife, and their work was to put their fingers and their hands on somebody, and they would literally work on the tissues in their beautiful hands. I actually took pictures, and they didn't survive the trip. There was a horrible storm, and I had left my stuff because I couldn't carry it when I was going to go back for it. The place that I left, it got soaked and flooded and destroyed all of my pictures, literally my film. But anyway, the beautiful hands, just the thickness of their knuckles and the strength of their muscles, even the muscles on their palms, you could tell that these hands were used and could feel, and it was like their hands were the communication between the person that they worked on and themselves. So they were body workers. They only worked on muscles and tissue. And then the other was a sobador, which was very similar. But the huesero actually did manipulations. They worked on joints and making. They literally worked on making somebody's joints crack and manipulate them. For the sobador, which I was really shocked, they had both herbs and used their hands.
Okay.
So I thought that was really interesting. And not so much herbs that they would ingest, but they did lots of soaking baths. So plants soaked in water and then towels or some kind of wrap put in the water and then placed on the body, and then rubbing that stuff in, or oils. So it was like this really specific use of herbs to move the tissues and pulling of the skin. It wasn't so much that they were trying to bend bones, and they were really working with the tissues of the body. So it was a little different than the hueseros.
It sounds like an honor and a privilege that you got to learn from these people. The whole time, what were you thinking?
I was in Wonderland. I just felt like a kid in a candy store. I couldn't get enough, and I feel like that enthusiasm was really respected. I wasn't just, taking pictures and being a tourist. I was, I swept the floors and I ate with them, and I just sat quietly and didn't try not to ask too many questions, because I can often do that too. And a couple of times, one of the women just put her hand on me and was just like, "It's just time to look, like, don't talk." I had to learn to be an observer. It was humbling and exciting.
Even that's a lesson in itself, just to learn and be an observer, right?
Oh, yes.
So it sounds like you're getting a 24-hour education.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they see you, I think one of the first adjectives they have is you're spiritual. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you've heard that a thousand times, right, Dr. Elena? Everyone I talk to, even myself, just my basic observations of you is you're real spiritual. And I think nowadays you see there's a lot of talk about spirituality. A lot of people could be spiritual. Catholics can be spiritual. Buddhists could be spiritual. Muslims could be spiritual. Atheists could be spiritual as well. Mm-hmm. What's your definition of spirituality?
I really get that we're not just these bodies with bones and skin and organs and blood pumping through us, that we're more than that. We're our thoughts, we're our emotions, and we're our senses, what we sense and how we perceive. And we are sense-orientated organisms. We feel, we touch, we taste, we see, we hear vibrations. So I feel like spirituality is connecting to all these parts of who we are and allowing that to receive and to communicate with those around us, plants, animals, nature, each other, and those things that are seen and unseen. So spirituality to me is the expansion and the connection of all the aspects of ourselves and the fields around us. Not just the space, but the field. So spirituality is embracing that idea and investing energy into learning and communicating and understanding how all those aspects of ourselves, our senses, our thoughts, our emotions, our fields, how they're connected, and really investing in it. That is spirituality to me. So it doesn't really have a name, it doesn't have a label like you said, Muslim or Buddhist or Catholic. They all share the same ideas, but spirituality doesn't have a name. Like, it doesn't have I went to the school of this. I really don't think that's spirituality. I think it's a way of being.
And for that way of being, I guess, let's say if someone's listening to this and they're on their path, and let's say they like your definition of spirituality, what's the first step that they should do? Let's say someone's ground zero, they heard a podcast, they like your definition of spirituality. You know what? That resonates with me more than what I've heard. What's the first step that they should take, or what do you recommend?
No, that's a tough question.
I brought my A game today, Dr. Elena.
I know, man. Okay, well,
take your time.
I feel like number one, the first step is to just listen. We get so afraid about things we feel or see or even things that we taste. I mean, I have two little ones, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old that I'm caring for right now. And the biggest thing is eating. There's just this fear about if it looks a certain way or it doesn't look a certain way, should I put it in my mouth or not? And I really, really would love for because I'm getting them now that at this age instead of when they were babies, I don't get to show them to experience what taste is. They come with fears. And I feel like someone on the path to spirituality, they're coming with a lot of fear. So number one is listen to stop, open up just a little bit and receive what's present. First step one is stop trying to make it mean anything. Like my little girl's like, oh, it's green, that can't be okay. That must taste awful. Instead of putting a thought process into it, it's just stop. Let go of all the judgments and open up just enough. Just open the aperture of your thought, of your perception, just enough to receive something different. That's step one. Just receive. You don't even have to understand it. You don't have to make it make sense. Just receive what is. And then let it pass, without a judgment. So one, drop your judgments.
That's the first crucial step, right? That's what you would recommend?
I would say that would be a good first step. Crucial? I don't know. Honestly, I really believe that the path to spirituality is multifaceted. Like, you can use your body to get to seek out what spirituality is through yoga or dance or running, or I was on the peace and dignity journey where I ran every day. I want to tell you, you want to meet whatever God, the creation, all that is, use your body and you will get there. I even think that you can use sex to get to spirituality. There's the whole Kundalini experience, and it's about using those parts of your body to experience all that is, the wholeness of who we are. So there's not just one way, and it's not the crucial way. It's just my impression of the first step. But spirituality can be entered through any of all the ways that we perceive.
And then, so when you went to Mexico, I want to go back a little bit. Mm-hmm. When you went to Mexico, with these yerbero, huesero, sobadores, after your journey there, I'm guessing you came back to the United States, you came back to Los Angeles, mm-hmm. and did they encourage you? Did you find enlightenment? Like, I want to do this as a career, or what was your next steps after that?
Oh, well, the truth is, I was a school teacher before I became what I'm doing now, and I didn't make that journey until after I started teaching. And it was actually, I was a martial artist for 20 years, and I was doing that. And because it's you have to touch so much, I already knew that my fingers, my hands knew how to read. I could read a body with my hands and with my eyes. So I already knew I had that information somehow. And we had a chiropractor who was in our team in our dojo, a member. And it was actually through him that I was inspired to go to chiropractic school.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah. And it was between that time that I got to have my journey to Mexico. And it was clear, like, this is what I'm going to do.
How did he inspire you to go into, to be a chiropractor? What did he tell you, or what did you see from him that really inspired you?
Well, the truth was I didn't know anything about chiropractic, but I was studying I was a martial artist, so I was testing for my black belts. And I was in a car accident, and I had broken my ankle. And I needed to have it better so that I could take the test. And I can't remember the time. It was like a few months or maybe 6 months. And he was the doctor on the team. And I said, would you see me so that I can be stronger? And he did this weird stuff. Like, he put stuff on my stomach and tested me with my arms. And it's crazy. Whatever I thought was crazy, I got better. And he started healing things that I didn't even know I needed to heal, and until I started to feel better, and I was like, that thing? I'm actually feeling better about that. And eventually we got to my bones and my tissues, and he helped me so much that not only was I ready for my martial arts test, that I had no pain afterwards. which I had a childhood injury, and I was always limping after every practice. After everything I did, I was always limping because I was in so much pain. I wake up with pain, and that was the first time I didn't have any pain for several months, and even after that really rigorous martial arts black belt test. And I was like, what are you doing? I need to know this. So he's the one who showed me that his hands and medicine and herbs can help heal people. Not medicine, but natural medicine.
So, basic question: what exactly does a chiropractor do? I think a lot of people have this definition from movies and from shows that they crack your neck and they crack your back and that's it.
Yeah, no, that's so far from no. That's like looking at, I don't know, an artist and saying all they do is slap paint on a canvas. There's so much to it. The basic premise of chiropractic is that the philosophy is that you are an innate being. You're not just, like I said, arms and legs and organs. You're also this intelligence. You're this innate intelligence, and this intelligence operates whether you're thinking about it or not. And its main goal is to find balance and regain and repair damage of the body. And so chiropractic helps to get in touch with that place and turn it on if it's been turned off using our hands. So chiro means hands, so practic is the practice of using our hands to bring balance back into the body. And so the premise is that we turn on and address your innate intelligence to heal yourself, and that includes manipulation of the bones, the tissues, the organs, and any nutrition that can support it.
You're an expert with plants and herbs. You're an expert at cracking bones as well, a chiropractor. I say one of the big, so that's a big foundation of your practice. And I say another equally important part of your practice is applied kinesiology, which is also known as muscle testing. Mm-hmm. And I have a story to tell you. One of the first times I've seen you, when I came to visit you, I broke the tip of my right index finger. Mm-hmm. And they put I think it's called a stent where it has to stay straight, right?
A brace?
A brace, yeah. They had a brace so I could stay straight, and it healed. And then after it healed, every time I bent it, I had this pain at the tip, like it wouldn't go away. And the doctors, Western medicine, like, well, we can't do anything about that. It's already healed. What can we do about it? I came to visit you. I said, doctor, I still have this pain. It still hurts. You did applied kinesiology with me, the muscle testing. And you told me as a remedy to lose 15 pounds. I don't know if you remember this.
I don't.
And I said, lose 15 pounds. Yes, lose 15 pounds and the pain will go away. Now, people might be thinking, even to this day, I still think, like, what the heck does losing 15 pounds has to do with taking away pain from a muscle that has already healed? I ran every day. I got on a diet. I lost the 15 pounds and the pain went away. Thanks to you and thanks to muscle testing. So people that are hearing this, what is applied kinesiology, also known as muscle testing?
Applied kinesiology is a term that Dr. George Goodhart coined for this process that people call muscle testing. And I'm sure this kind of using the muscles, using the body to help determine whether something is balanced or unbalanced has been around for ages, but he actually had the words and the insight and the whereabouts to, I think he's pretty brilliant, to put it all together into words, and he called it applied kinesiology. Kinesiology is the science of motion and movement, right? And when you apply it to the body and you use muscles to test their strength, just walking up to somebody and putting out an arm and putting a little pressure on it to see how strong it is. Men do it all the time, like, and then testing it against challenges, like challenging, touching a different part of the body or putting food on it, or, a different or a motion. And if that same strong muscle doesn't stay strong, it's like a message to anybody watching or to the person being tested that there's something out of balance here. Because why would those things, a previously strong muscle, be weak if you just touch some other part of your body? And he asked that question often enough and tested it several times that he started to see the connection. And he looked through all kinds of literature, and he realized that it was the way that the body communicates to let you know when something is 100% in alignment and balance and when it wasn't. And when a muscle that is previously strong gets challenged by either touching your body someplace else, a food, a thought, it could be anything, and it throws off your strong muscle, he determined that it was like saying, this is not good for me. This throws off my balance, and I'd like to get it fixed. And he learned that the body communicates through its own voluntary muscles, and your mind can't get in the way of it. And I actually see it as a part of your spirit, your innate intelligence speaking to you, using your body to be the communication tool. And he was just brilliant to put it all together so that we can actually apply it to healing. And now, oh my gosh, everybody uses it. Psychologists, therapists. I've seen it in all kinds of ways.
So for the people that are listening, I know since this is all audio, people can't see, so I could picture some people saying, what the heck is that? Still have no idea what she's talking about. The way I would describe it is we're made out of energy, right? Mm-hmm. And everything else is also made out of energy: food, books, liquids, etc.
Everything.
So if you put, for example, an apple near your body, you test a certain muscle, for example, an arm, and if it stays strong, that means the apple's good. You can consume the apple. If your arm goes weak, then that means your body is rejecting the apple. That it doesn't want the apple at that moment or at that time.
That specific apple, yes.
Okay. Also, if anyone's really still confused about that, you could pause the podcast and go. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about this.
Yeah.
And how about for people that already do muscle testing? I know a lot of people might get intimidated by muscle testing. Like, I can't do that. I'm not as cool as Dr. Elena. I don't have the knowledge she has. I've recently started trying to muscle test myself, and nice. I can't get it. I still can't get it. And I know a lot of people, I read the comments on YouTube too, people saying they can't get it or they can't do it. And let's say someone listens to this and they see the YouTube videos and they want to start implementing it. What's the first advice would you give to someone that says, I just can't get it? I
really, really, really suggest that you work with someone who teaches muscle testing. I do teach muscle testing twice a year. In fact, I'm going to start teaching it again in March. The reason is you want someone who is standing next to you, showing you what it feels like. You need to have that practice. And in the beginning, it's hard. It's incredulous to imagine that your body is responding to you. And it's not always clear that you're listening to what you're getting. And because we're not in tune to our parts, we don't know where our fingers begin and end. We don't trust the answers we get in the beginning. And it takes a while. Every practitioner who does muscle testing had, I'm sure, months, if not years, where they were like, is this real? Is this real? Until they're like, I think this really is real. We have the moment where it's like, I do feel it. It is a practice, and it's really important to get someone who works with you in the beginning so that you have the sense of what it feels like. It is something you can learn. Anybody can learn it. Children can learn it. I'm teaching these 3 and 4-year-olds to learn it.
So Dr. Elena, what do you bring to the table with all your years of herbs and plants, and with being a chiropractor and doing muscle testing, that you give people an alternative to medicine and an alternative option for their health?
So this is what I feel like I bring. I feel like it's not so much the things that I do, is what I'm not trying to do. I'm not trying to heal them. What I'm trying to do is listen. Remember I said go back to listening? Mm-hmm. So what I bring to the table is an opportunity to listen to someone's story, because in that story is the information that got them to their illness. They're telling me, they're actually giving me everything I need to know on how they got sick. And I believe that many people don't even get that their story has the answer. They're just not listening to it. And so what I do is I become a good listener, and I become a good interpreter, and I present it back to them in a way that feels comfortable, in a way that speaks to them in a language that they understand, and it allows them to open up to the possibility that maybe I can be healed. You hear me, you see me, you get that something's not right. And sometimes that's all people need to know is like, I'm heard. And they start to get better from that moment that they are heard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. I've always believed that even just talking can cure a lot of people from depression, anxiety, or whatever problems they're having. I've always been an advocate of that, just talking. So it sounds like you're saying that a lot of people create their own illnesses. Is that accurate?
No, I didn't actually say that. I said that
I could scratch that.
they have... No, that's okay. That's actually not a bad thing to ask. No, what I said is that they have a story, and in their story is the answer. No, I think that there are lots of reasons why people get sick. Sometimes the body is weak. But it's not enough to stop there. You have to go to the next step. How did the body become weak? Sometimes it's hereditary. Sometimes it was, it's a childhood fright that never got addressed, and it just that illness creates a weakness that later in life shows up as something big. But if we don't listen to the whole story, we won't know the root. It's not just enough to say that the body is weak. What made it weak? Because we all start out pretty much on the same line, unless there's some deficiencies, and there's lots of information about how each generation comes with a little less oomph, gusto and whatever it takes to be healthy.
Yeah.
So there's a combination of things that make people sick.
Yeah. So with all your knowledge, like I said, the plants, the herbs, being a chiropractor, the muscle testing, and right now I'm looking at all your books. You have a wealth of knowledge in your head and in your library as well. So I consider you a trailblazing Latina because, you are a business owner. You've gathered all this knowledge, all this experience, and you want to help people, and you open your business. To me, that's the definition of a trailblazer. But just because someone has all this knowledge and all the privileges and honors that you've had in life, that doesn't mean they're going to open a business. So what made you actually want to open your business and start and help people?
That's good. Well, I actually didn't just start my own business. I worked with and for other doctors in their clinics, and it was just clear to me that I couldn't do what I needed to do and how I wanted to present space, or I couldn't do that when I was under somebody else. And it was mostly out of necessity, that if I really wanted to give people how I felt I would have loved to have been treated when I was having my own issues, that I would have to do it on my own. And honestly, I was terrified to do it. And I started out in a 7-by-8 room that I rented out of another place. And I wasn't there to see people. I was just going to make herbs, make teas, and just present them, in the community at little markets. And I wasn't really ready to help people except for in the setting in a clinic that I was with other people. But friends started to hear that I had this little spot, and so I stuffed a 5-by-3 table into my little 7-by-12 room, and I pushed all my tools to the side, and I would, adjust somebody, and eventually there was a line of people, and it turned out to be that it was clear that I needed to open my own space. So it was about necessity and accident. And I love being able to have my own space, but it's not easy. And if I don't work, I can't pay my bills. So there's this other part that has to be addressed, is you can help people, but you also have to live. So learning how to be a good business person takes time. And if there was any place I wish I would have had more help, was learning how to be a good business person. Because it's easy to give this stuff away and forget that, you have to do I have to survive too. But yeah, it's a joy and also a burden.
I think a lot of even whether successful or not, even people that fail in business, they always have stories about roadblocks and roadblocks that they've had to overcome so their business could succeed. What would you say like was a major roadblock for you to overcome?
Fear.
I'm sure a lot of people, that's the number one answer people would give.
And fear that, am I doing the right thing? Fear that am I really, is this really helping people? And fear, I wasn't really afraid of not being successful, because I wasn't looking like my goal is to make $1 million. I mean, like that wasn't part of my fear. My fear was, am I doing the right thing? And it became a roadblock because, I mean, like I said, I started out in a tiny little room. And even in that moment, I knew that it wasn't too small. But I was too afraid to go out on my own. And so my next place was just a little bigger. And I mean, it took me 6 years to get to this place. That feels big. But even now, I know it's not big enough. It's mostly just fear. That is my major block. And if I can just get over it, I think I can help way more people. So
I think aside from businesses, people have fear every day.
yeah.
What would you recommend to those people that, what's the first step to get over fear?
Number one is to acknowledge that it's just fear and step forward anyway. Number one, it's just fear. And I'd rather die being afraid and stepping forward than not doing it at all.
I know when we were talking about doing this interview, you were thinking about, I think you were thinking about going to Mexico, right? Because you wanted to study an herb or a plant.
Yeah.
Did you end up going?
I did. I went to Baja California.
Yeah.
It's been on my bucket list for years, to be in Baja California, because there are some really beautiful plants there that you can't find anywhere else. And I knew of them because I did a plant study in 3 deserts: Sonoran Desert, Mojave Desert, and Colorado Great Basin Desert. And when I was in Sonora Desert, there were plants that were specific to that area. And because it was just on the northern part of the Sonoran Desert, which is in Southern California and Arizona, they weren't really beautiful, they weren't good specimens, and there were so few. It was hard to appreciate them. But the Sonoran Desert goes all the way into Sonora, of course, and Baja California. And if I just went there, I could actually see true specimens in the wild, not in some botanical garden. And I wanted to do that. So I guess it's been like 10 years, and I finally did it. And I spent a week driving through Baja California Norte and a little bit of the south. I cannot tell you. I'm going to definitely make this a yearly journey, because the plants are radiant and beautiful. And the beauty about Mexico is that there's these still wild places that if you're not interested, you won't even care. And these places have been pristine and kept beautiful and pure, and they're alive and vibrant and amazing medicine. So I brought back some samples, and I'm just going to do some tests and experiments with them and see what I can do with them.
If you don't mind me asking, which plants did you have your most interest right now?
Right now, it's the torote tree, or the elephant tree, which it's said in English. I didn't even know that there were several different kinds, and I mean, I was like salivating over this one little one that I saw in a woman's garden the first day that I went to Baja California, in just south of Ensenada, actually a way south. And I was like, oh my gosh, this beautiful tree. And my companion who took me, who had already been there and knew what was ahead, said, I don't think you're going to want to spend too much time here. I promise you. And I'm like, no, we have to. I wanted to spend hours talking, sitting with this plant. He's like, trust me, let's just go. And I was really annoyed.
Uh-huh.
But when a few hours later, we made the turn into the true desert, and I just literally almost fell on the floor, kissed the ground, and was laughing at myself, because the specimens that I brought back were full of life. And these trees, I thought they only grew a few feet tall. They were 10 and 12 feet tall. I didn't even know they grew that tall. So the torote tree, I brought back some succulents
For that torote tree, what's the potential healing power for that?
Oh my goodness.
Oh, this is a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
You can just name a couple of healing powers.
Well, it is synonymous with frankincense and boswellia, which is an African plant, and they are world renowned for anti-inflammatory properties, and inflammation is a big deal in the body. And there's also anti-cancerous, antimicrobial. This plant is beyond belief the different aspects that it can heal. So I learned about respiratory issues, cancer, broken bones. I mean, it's just like multiple, and each one has its gifts. So I have to really sit with them and break it down and see what they're offering. But the possibility of using this kind of plant medicine from my roots and from so local, that's just exciting. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm excited to do it, and I can't wait to see where this takes me.
I know I cut you off. I think I know that just in case the audience is listening and they go, oh, she was about to say another plant. I think you were about to say succulents as well.
Yeah, there were several different agaves, and when I found them, I thought it was the same plant, but each climate, and this is really interesting when you go through Baja. You have to make the drive if you haven't. Anybody who hasn't needs to do it.
I feel like that's a state that gets ignored a lot.
You know what? There was nobody there. I mean, I'm almost afraid to say it because I don't want I don't want everybody to go. But
well, that'll be a good thing. That means everyone listens to this podcast and they know who you are if they all go.
That's true. But I learned that every section had its prominent plants, even though they were similar. Like the agave in one part was not as prominent in another. The one torote tree with red branches was really prominent in the mountains, but not in the lower deserts. And the ones that were in the rocks were not in the sand. So it made me feel like each plant. So there were flowers. There were succulents, there were cactus, trees. I mean, each one, there were so many. And each one showed me that even though it was the same plant, it did different things depending on where I got it from. So, I don't know, this is going to take years.
Just two more questions, Dr. Elena. I know time is running out. The first one would be, the second to last one would be, let's say you really encourage someone to start paying attention to plants, and they want to start getting into plants and to botany. What's the first plant that you recommend that someone should buy or to have in their house so they could start connecting spiritually or just connecting with nature?
You know what? It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter if it's just a house plant that you want to connect to that isn't going to be used for medicine. It's just beautiful to you. Anytime you can sit with a plant and just allow yourself to open up to communicating with it. I know it sounds goofy and, whatever, crystal gazing, ding dong, whatever. But if you give yourself that opportunity, there is so much to learn. Even just observing like in grade school, you get a bean and you put it in wet paper towel and you watch it sprout. Even the process of doing that can change your life if you pay attention.
And then the last question would be, you're a person with so much knowledge and life experience. If you were to leave the audience with one piece of advice or recommendation, what would it be besides the listening to your body, your fear advice, and the plant advice? I always love picking your brain. You always have something new to teach me. So besides those three things, is there anything else that you want to leave the audience with that they could ponder?
I really want to go back to the first thing you asked me, and I said, listen. I really, really want to go back to being still and listening. We are always in a rush. We're always preoccupied with our phones and what the world is doing.
There's a phone right now.
There's the phone right now. And just slow down, stop, be still. Even if you're so uncomfortable, you just give yourself a detox of all technology and listen. Listen to your heartbeat. Listen to the sounds of the world around you, the songs of your world. And then start to choose which ones feed you and which ones don't. Feel. Listen, stop, listen, and feel. That's what I love to say.
Hey everyone, Dr. Elena had to answer the phone after she gave her last piece of advice. If you like what she had to say, and if you're looking for alternative medicine to heal, you can reach out and make an appointment at 323-268-2144. Again, that is 323-268-2144. And if you want to send me an email with any questions, comments, or suggestions, you can reach me at trailblazinglatinos@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.